Welcome to Sausage on a Fork, a podcast dedicated to the UK's longest running children's drama programme, Grange Hill. My name's Neil, and in each episode I'll interview a former cast member about their life before, during and after their time on the programme. Okay, welcome to the latest episode of Sausage on a Fork, and I am absolutely delighted to say that I have been joined for this episode by none other than Margo Selby, who played Julie Corrigan. Margo, welcome to Sausage on a Fork.
Hi, Neil. Thanks for inviting me on.
Not a problem at all. Well, what we'll do, I nearly called you Julie then. What we'll do, Margo, is
I've been called Julie for years.
What we'll do, Margo, is we'll start this episode the way we start every episode. And if you can tell us how you first got into acting.
Yeah, so I was quite a naughty child. I think the word precocious was sometimes used.
Right, okay.
And I think my mum and dad had a chat with each other. They were like, we need to channel this. This is like, we've got issues here. Send her to stage school.
Wow.
And my dad was like, don't put your daughter on the stage, Mrs. Worthington. my mum was totally behind it. She thought it was a really good idea because I suppose I was just quite, I think probably maybe in today's day and age, I might have got diagnosed with ADHD.
Right, I get you, yeah.
I was, all my reports said that I was disruptive and, I mean, I was quite happy, but I didn't seem to be able to sit down and concentrate.
Yeah.
So my dad eventually gave in and contacted Sylvia Young.
Right.
And I remember I went and did a little audition up there. I sang Tomorrow from Annie.
All right, yeah.
I used to say to people when I was aged 8, I used to say to people, have you seen Annie? That's me, that is. I know I look a bit different, but it's just what the TV does to you. And I used to think that I could get away with that. And so I sang my song from Annie, read a poem, a T.S. Eliot poem. And so I started at Sylvia Young the next term.
Right.
And it was really good fun. I mean, it was a crazy place, lots of big characters. And, immediately from starting there, you start getting put up for different jobs, and I started getting into different bits of work. I mean, one of the most memorable things I did before Grange Hill was Cat on a Hot Tin Roof at the National Theatre with so many famous people, Ian Charleston, Lindsay Duncan, Alison Steadman. It was just absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
And I think I was 9 then. And we went on tour with the National Theatre. We went to Glasgow, Edinburgh, and somewhere else, but I can't remember now. But it was so I'd done a little bit of theatre, and I'd done a couple of adverts like lots of the other people that I've heard interviewed on you. And then the auditions for Grange Hill came up. And I remember the first audition was for extras, and it was like the whole school had to go up for them to select who they wanted to be the extras. So the kind of walk-on parts, the background kids. And I remember they came in and they read out about 20 names in my class of who'd got these extra parts. And I was really disappointed that they didn't call my name.
Yeah.
Then the next week I got called in for an audition, and I remember I used to wear these like really big glasses back then. Had lots of different colourful big glasses. I think my dad had thought it was a good idea, but I remember walking in, tripping over, and then I just stood up and I was like, right, do you want me with my glasses or without? And I was pulled my glasses on, and I think I was just a little character, and they were like, right, she looks like she'd be good to be the bullied character in the program. I don't even think I got a recall. I think I just got the part then.
Wow.
And it was brilliant. Loads of my friends, like all in my class at Sylvia Young. So there was Jamie Lahane, Ian, Otis. So we were all in the class together, and we all got Grange Hill together, and we all started together. So it was
brilliant. And had you been a fan of the programme?
Yes, in fact, I remember about 6 months before I even went to Sylvia Young, I remember being on the bus, and I think I saw Alison Bettles.
Right. Wow.
And I remember thinking, oh my God, that's that girl from Grange Hill. And then I I was like, no, it can't be. It can't be. And then obviously a year later, it was me being the girl from Grange Hill.
Yeah. So what was it like then going from, watching the program and seeing like these people on the program and then to being in a room with the likes of, Samantha Lewis and John Drummond and all these people? Because you were there. It's weird when I like look at your time on it, you were there with some of them like them big characters, like
Yeah, I think when we all started, they were all like sixth formers, so they
yeah.
were really well known, established, like
Uh-huh.
kind of prime Grange Hill time. Like they
Yeah.
were at the end of their time, and we were coming in as the newbies. And it was just amazing. I mean, it was just such an incredible feeling. I think we all got a little bit big-headed. I remember I remember the chaperones always like sort of putting us in our place,
Yeah.
like, don't get too big for your boots.
Yeah. Brilliant. Okay. So like you say, you joined Grade Hill. It was series 13, went on air in 1990, and you joined as a first year. And in I think it's the first scene we see Julian holding the dog, holding Jacko's
Oh,
dog,
yeah.
Gruff,
We
and
found,
the Simpsons were trying to get the dog from
yeah.
her, claiming it was there, but she wouldn't give in, and she wouldn't give to him. But then Becky and Alice came along and took the dog and let the dog go. And it was then that Julie sort of like introduced us. Like she was
Tried
quite
to make
confident.
friends with them.
Yeah, I mean, she was quite confident at first. Julie, like, she's there introducing herself. She tried to introduce herself to Becky and Alison and Keith and Brian, but she never got the reaction she wanted. Did she? She was not.
Everyone just thought, oh God,
Yeah,
you look a bit bad. I don't think I want to know you. So
yeah.
I kind of, yeah, the first year was all kind of, I was playing a bit of a victim, and
Julie was in R1, and the teacher for R1 was Mrs. Munro, played by Anna Quayle. And
I loved Anna Quayle.
were you aware of like how famous she was?
When I first met Anna, I mean, me and Anna Quayle had a really kind of close relationship,
Right.
and she sent me Christmas cards until she died. Like she was
Oh,
absolutely amazing. She used to do these hand-drawn Christmas cards. And when I first met her, I didn't have the awareness of the
right.
Chitty Chitty Bang Bang and what a star she was. But after some time,
Yeah,
I realized, and then I was even more in awe.
yeah,
Yeah, she was a lovely woman, and she always used to say that she related to my acting style. She said that her and we always kind of overplayed it, but we were kind of like the big characters, and she always kind of connected the two of us,
oh, wow,
which was really nice. And I think when I first started in it, there was a write-up in the Stage. Do you remember the paper, the
yeah,
Stage?
yeah.
It was, and it was talking about the new series of Grange Hill, and it said that my character had been the new character to replace Roland because Roland had just left.
Uh-huh.
And
Right.
so he was always kind of the slight victim, and I think that they were looking for another
Yeah.
person to fit that role, and I took that.
What? Brilliant, brilliant. I mean, what a character to follow as well,
I know.
Brilliant. And then Julie was like, we've talked about her being the victim in those things where like she got her lunch pinched by Neil Simpson. So she had one of a Keith offered her one of his samosas.
Oh yeah, I remember trying the.
Yeah. And then he said to her, like, what do you think of Grange Hill? And she thought it was horrible. But there's signs of a slight friendship forming there for Julie. And in the first year, Becky and Alice were like, well, certainly Becky was sort of more kinder towards Julie than she was sort of, in the next year or so. Because there's a bit where Julie's forgotten her PE kit and she's really upset about it. And it's Becky that's like consoling her and calming her down. And Becky actually goes out of her way to get Julie a PE kit. And it's just like a far cry from what happens later on. And like she even goes to Becky's house with Alice.
Yes, I vaguely remember going to, but what happened at their house? I can't remember.
So that's when they were talking about. like some of like the sixth form girls. And Julie said she thought Georgina was really pretty. So then Alice said that like she wasn't that pretty. And Julie seemed to be like sort of following Georgina around the school. And I
I
think
was following her.
yeah, I think she just had like, she just looked up to it, didn't she? Like she just,
I think it was like it was a storyline of sort of like, yeah, a young girl being like really in awe and like
yeah,
admiration, um, and a bit stalkery to
yeah,
an
yeah. But like Georgina asked, like told Julie like to stop following her. And Alice heard, and then Alice said to Julie, "You've got a thing about her, haven't you?" And she doesn't actually like deny it. She just sort of like she just asks Alice not to tell anyone, but Alice just said that Julie was weird and walked off. And in the next lesson, like in the cookery lesson,
Mm.
Alice then starts telling people about Julie fancying Georgina, and this is where like the bullying thing sort of
Yes, yeah.
started a little bit. Alice was like saying about Julie fancying her and started singing to her. So Julie actually stands up for herself here and soaks them with
Oh, that
the
was right, wasn't it? In the science lesson.
yeah,
I sprayed something all over them or
yeah. So yeah, she like sprays the water on them. And then you just mentioned the science lesson there. There was another science lesson where Mr. Hankins' Aunt Camellia came in. She was an opera singer.
oh, I don't remember
So
this.
big lady dressed all in pink. And she came in to like do sound waves and she actually smashed the glass
Oh
with
yeah,
her
no, I remember
voice.
the glass exploding. Yeah.
I know, because I was going to ask you, did that actually happen or was it all just props and
Oh, it would have all been props. It wouldn't have
right?
been
So
like real opera singing, glass smashing, I don't think. Um, but I do vaguely remember that now.
right, okay,
I mean, I don't know if it was that year, but the one of my most memorable moments with Alice and Becky was the them saying that I could get into their
yeah,
gang. So what I had to do was jump into the swimming pool during a lesson with all my clothes on, and that would allow me to be part of their gang.
right, okay. So when there's an episode of the podcast coming up, I put picture clues on for who the guest is going to be, and the first person that guesses who it's going to be gets to ask a question. So I've got a question for you from someone called Charles Ball. Charles is a big fan of the podcast. Like he always has a go at the guest to guest. So it's about that scene, and it's what was it like filming that scene?
Absolutely brilliant. That was like one of my highlights from doing Grange Hill. It was so fun. I remember them, we had to go through it several times.
Right.
Like, we are only doing this in one take. We are not doing, because obviously I was going to go from bone dry to soaking wet.
Yeah.
But it was, I really, really loved it. It was really, really fun.
Brilliant. Now, the thing with that storyline, the bullying, it just it just seems to come from nowhere. Like there never seemed to be, and I suppose like some bullying does start like that. There didn't seem to be any sort of catalyst for it to kick off, other than Julie was a bit quieter than everyone else.
And the way I looked as well, I had
Yeah,
ginger hair, I had glasses, I think that's what bullying often is. It's the
yeah,
kids that are slightly different and just don't fit in the same way. And everyone wants to fit in when they start secondary school. Even I wanted to fit in. I had to play that character knowing that I was a bit of a kind of oddball in some ways.
right.
So it kind of reinforced my own insecurities.
Yeah, because I mean, they're there, and as I said, in the first year, the girls would sort of like, oh, certainly Becky, they'd been friends, and then all of a sudden the words and obviously Robin had joined by this point, Nina,
Right.
and that's where the first sort of signs we see of that, where like Robin and Julie are working together. Julie saying to Mr. Hankin, another legend, by the way, Lee Corns, absolute
Oh,
legend,
yeah.
saying like she's supposed to be working with me, and in the end, Neil goes and works with Julie, and the girls say to him, "Bad luck, Neil." And you just think it just seems to have like come from nowhere. Like, but as you said, there was things about her character and appearance.
But luckily we were all good friends offset. I mean,
Right.
Nina Fry, Natalie Poyser, Alice, but Alice didn't stay in it for very long.
No,
Alice,
no, she was only there a few years, yeah.
but it was, yeah, they were all really, really lovely.
Brilliant. Okay. When Julie told Mrs. Monroe, that the girls were starting to pick on her and be like stealing her books and stuff, Mrs. Monroe just said to her that she needed to stand on her own 2 feet. And you know what, you just think, God, that's shocking. Like, to be honest, like, because it's not really that helpful, is it? The fact that there's 3 girls doing stuff to her, but
My daughter started in year 7 last year, and girls, there can be a lot of girl drama, and sometimes you do need to say no nonsense.
yeah,
I mean, you've got to be sympathetic and you've got to be zero tolerance of like cruelty, but then there is also a side where you've got to say, come on, let's just crack on.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it was it led to like that thing of Julie not wanting to go into school and pretending that saying she was ill, and she was like trying to convince her mum that she was ill, and her mum was sending it like, but saying mum was saying, you've got to go into school. Now the thing about the mum was she was played by Jovan, who was the original Peggy Mitchell in EastEnders.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so before,
I remember she came up in other things as well later
yeah,
on. She was
so,
quite a character actress, wasn't she?
yeah, it's like before Barbara Windsor, she was Phil and Grant's mum.
Fantastic.
Brilliant. And
Yes, I remember that now. I do remember that. I do remember that.
yeah, and the mum gave her a sick note for being off, but obviously Alice got hold of it and ripped it up, and that all then led to like the jumping in the swimming pool, which we've talked about there. And it was, no matter, the girls were never going to be her friends at that point. They just wanted to see, is she going to jump in the pool? Because they actually told the lads she does anything we tell her to do. And
and I think the line was, "Oh, the test was to see how stupid you were, and you
yeah,
passed it."
yeah, that's right.
That one stayed with me.
And this was around the time of when like the pregnancy storyline of Chrissy Mannering, and it was actually Becky and Alice had found out when they were in that crawl space. Remember, there was that thing where they could go in the toilet and they could get in, they could go around the school like in the vents or in like the roof in the ceiling, and it was Becky that had said it was Julie who had started the rumor about Chrissy being pregnant, even though it was actually Alice and Becky that had started telling people.
I can't believe you've got this level of detail. Do you know,
that's not my first rodeo. So then the girls, like the older girls, start having to go at Julie, like the likes of Justine and Natalie, and then followed by Alice and Becky. But Julie starts standing up for herself, telling them to shut up and walking away. And then Julie went missing. If you remember that, she walked out of school and then
night shot. Yeah, I
yeah,
was walking around in the middle of the night. I remember that. That was always fun filming at night time.
Yeah, it was. She met a policewoman who like sort of convinced her to go back. But the thing about that was, you see Becky and Robin on the phone to each other, trying to convince themselves that it wasn't their fault, that that Julie hadn't gone home.
They were feeling a bit of guilt there, were they?
Yeah. And then it all came out then that Julie had been getting picked on by the girls, and Mrs. Monroe came and they took the girls to Mrs. McCluskey. And the next time we saw Julie and the girls, they were still telling her, like they weren't being as bad, but they were telling her to stop following her. So they learned a little bit, but they still just didn't want to be her friend. And I don't know if you remember this bit when we talked about the crawl space and the girls were in it, but Alice's foot fell through it. Julie was there just getting a bit of a laugh at Alice's expense for a change. And there was also the ill thought out pizza selling business. Jacko and Loco were selling pizzas at school, but they wanted to go and see Brian in hospital because this was around the time when there was the leukemia storyline. And they asked Akik to sell the pizzas. And Julie said she would. And it was Jacko that said, yeah, that's a good idea. We can trust her. So Julie and Akik go and try and sell the pizzas. But then the Timpsons turned up, and
Did they steal all the money?
they're trying to get in on the business, saying we're going to do this. And
David Crane and John Pickard.
yeah, yeah. And
Oh,
Julie actually stood up to them and sent them off, only to then be caught by Mr. Robson, another Grange Hill legend. And Julie and Akeek wouldn't say who was behind selling the pizzas. And you think they're going to get into a load of trouble, but then Jacko and Loco turn up, and they actually own up to being the ones getting the pizzas in. And we then moved on to series 15, and Julie was in the third year by now. And there was a bit more of a feisty side to Julie. That's what it started coming out with. The school newspaper was published with a story about Mr. Robson was going to be banning children from leaving the school at lunchtimes. And Mr. Robson didn't know the storyline had been published. And he asked Julie to open the door for him. But then she did. And then she says to him, "It's not fair." And when he asked what wasn't, she just said, "You know," and closed the door on him. And you know, and you just think, "Oh, this is a little bit different."
she gained strength over time.
Yeah. And Justine Dean had been attacked in the school, and there was rumours getting spread around the school, which then led to Julie telling everyone that someone had tried to murder Justine and that she was in a coma.
Really? So she was a drama queen as well.
Yeah.
I don't remember that middle period. I remember the beginning of my time in Grange Hill, and I remember the end, but I don't remember that middle bit as much.
Right. So okay. So all that had happened to Justine was she'd had a few stitches in her forehead. That was pretty much all it was. And I don't know if you remember the garden, the Peace Garden.
No, not really.
So you
by a garden, did I become a gardener?
Julie was quite heavily involved in the Peace Garden as well. Some of the lads from St. Joseph said they were going to come and wreck the garden. The garden was like, it was on the school grounds, but it wasn't.
I do remember the garden. I remember being in it.
It wasn't supposed to be accessible to the children.
And I remember the fights with St. Joseph's.
Yeah,
I wouldn't have been involved in that, but I remember that was a key story.
Yeah. So there was Julie, Alice, Becky, and Robin were all friends now, and they said that they were going to wait around to stop these lads trying to wreck the garden. The girls waited, and they saw lads from St. Joseph's turning up, but Jacko and his mates were there as well. And
I remember something about a fox as well.
Yeah, well, we'll get. Don't worry, don't you worry. We'll get onto that one in a minute.
You're jogging my memory. It's just.
I really need to ask you about the foxes. And the lads were there, and they rushed the lads from St. Joseph's and threw them out the garden, wrecking some of the flowers in the process. But then this led to some of the older lads coming from St. Joe's and having an argument with the older Grange Hill lads, which then eventually led to the huge fight on the waste grounds. Now, were you there for the filming of that one?
I don't remember the filming. I remember it was like Joseph Poby. He was one of the kind of, and David Crane, like the bad boys.
Yeah,
they were like leading the fight, but I don't remember being at the fight.
Right. Okay. Because there's just hundreds of kids in that scene, and I'll be honest. When I watched it, I couldn't see you in any of those scenes.
Probably extras.
Right. Okay. Because I couldn't see you, so I was just wanting to know if you were actually there for that.
No, I don't think I was there.
Okay. So we go back to the Peace Guard, and this is what you've just mentioned. It was where some of the younger girls had found an animal footprint and made a plaster cast of it, and Julie caught them because Julie was an official helper, and only official helpers were allowed in the garden. Was what she was saying to them. But then they find out that it's a fox footprint, and they go back. Julie and the girls go back. They watch a family of foxes. But when you watch it, it's quite obvious that those foxes were not there, and it was like stock footage of something. And when I asked Helena Marr about it, who played Diane, she said that there was just someone waving that they all had to look at and be like pretend that they were watching these foxes.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of that. There'd always be a lot of things that maybe happened afterwards.
It's just so funny
Not
because
that thing, Neil.
yeah, because you see the girls and then you see the foxes and you think, yeah, I don't think that they're actually there. Like, but
I think I remember that. I remember watching that. Even at the time, it was like, nah.
yeah. But then there was this thing about the developers wanting to come and buy the land, and the girls were then faced with a bit of a moral dilemma because they were worried that if they told the people, because they were thinking, well, if we tell the people that there's wildlife living there, they won't be able to build on it, but then it won't be our secret anymore as well. So they had this little bit of a dilemma. So they decided to join the protest to save the Peace Garden because at least then the fox's home would be saved. And a digger turned up and they found out that the local authority were going to sell the land. So the kids all threw a load of rotten vegetables at the workmen. And the girls went back to the garden later to try and find the foxes. But in the meantime, a fire had started in a shed in the garden. And Julie, Diane, and Fiona had got out, but Lauren was still in there. So Mr. Hankin and Miss Janowitz went in and rescued it. And Julie and the girls then had to come clean about the foxes. It was no longer their secret. And Julie got a telling off from Miss Keel because Miss Keel was the head teacher by now. And Alice also had to go at Julie, blaming her for the fire. But the other girls this time didn't take Alice's side, and they did actually take Julie's side. And at the end of that series, there was a fashion show, if you remember that one. And you did a little bit of modelling and dancing in that one.
No. God, I definitely don't remember that. What was I wearing?
It's like black t-shirts with like neon colour and lettering.
Oh, okay. Oh, it's coming back very, very slowly. It's like a bit of the brain that's being woken up. That
Right. Okay. We then move on to series 16, which you were in the fourth year. Now, when I looked, you were only in 9 episodes in this one. So that was went on air in 93, would have been filmed in 92. Is there any reason why you would only been in a
I
smaller
think
number?
I think they just different people came to the forefront at different
Right.
times. I don't think it was because I'd like asked or I was unwell or I was doing anything else. I think it was just different people had their turns to be at the forefront.
Right. Okay. Okay. And there was a new girl that started called Mary, an Irish girl.
Yes, she was like from a traveller
Yeah,
community.
that's the thing. And it was,
Yes. Oh wow. Yeah, it's coming back. She had long curly hair.
yeah, it was Julie that followed Mary to where because Mary was taking Robin to where she lived, and Julie followed them. And then they found out that that Mary, sorry, was a traveller. And it was actually Julie that started telling people that Mary was a traveller. Because what happened was when she'd been to see where they lived, she was walking back, and it was Barry Simpson and Mick, David Crane and Joe Polby, who they nicked Julie's bag, and Julie went, "If you give me that back, I'll tell you some really good gossip." And it was her then she'd then told those two.
I think she was a bit of a troublemaker,
Yeah,
really.
yeah. Because Julie had been like quite funny with Mary anyway, wanting to know why she was having showers in school and why Mary had lied about where she lived.
Bit nosy and a bit of a busybody.
Yeah. And like Mary had lied about where she lived. Like Julie and Robin had gone round to that house and found out that she hadn't lived there and stuff. So I think that had like slightly annoyed Julie as well.
Nothing like a bit of detective work.
Yeah. And like Julie followed her a few times. She said, as I say, eventually she found out where she lived and started
Basically,
telling
Julie was a
people.
bit of a stalker throughout the series.
Yeah. Well, I've got to ask that. Were you anything like Julie?
Not really. I don't think so. I mean, maybe later on, like when I became a sort of protester and a hippie,
Yeah, it's okay.
I think, that was probably picked up because I was starting to show an interest in sort of kind of alternative things in my
Yeah,
own personal life. So they probably did write in a bit of my own character.
right. Okay. And then in that series as well, there was a big thing about girls playing football, and the girls played the boys in a football match, and Jacko was running a book on it, and he offered Julie odds of 1,000 to 1 that the girls would win. So she bet £1. Sadly, though, the lads won through a goal in the last minute, which meant she never got a £1,000 win, unfortunately. And that then moves on to series 17, and Julie was year 11. And this is where there was a drama group had started in this one.
No, it wasn't Grease Lightning, was it?
Yeah, they did Grease. No, hang on, no, it wasn't. It was they were going to do Romeo. They were going to do Romeo and Juliet in this one.
Okay.
But Julie auditioned. She was as she read Mrs. Manningham from Gaslight. Don't know if you can remember doing that one. And like I say, they were going to do Romeo and Juliet, and I love this line. They were doing it. They had like a Sunday rehearsal where they all had to come in and they were talking it through. And it was the American teacher, Martha Jordan, was leading the group. And they were talking about the play, and she mentioned Paris from Romeo and Juliet. And it was Julie that said, Paris, but I thought this play was set in Verona. And that drama group had trouble when all the lads left after an improvisation had gone wrong, shall we say. But Julie wasn't around for that one. But I like to think that maybe things might have been different if Julie had been there when that improvisation had taken place. And the girls decided they were going to write their own play called Bits and Pieces, which they first performed for Mrs. Munro. Now, it was about how the girls thought the lads saw them. And I don't know if you can remember what your part was in this play.
Was I like a footballer?
Yeah, you were a football supporter.
Yes, because it was in the paper. I think it got written about in a paper. So somewhere I've got a cutting of me and Nina, and was it Natalie Poyser?
It was Amy Phillips.
Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah, no, and we were all dressed as like footballers.
Yeah, like two sexist lads, like football supporters.
Yeah, hooligans. Sexist.
Yeah. So was that easy to do? I know you're going to come back to it being acting again. But was it
That would have been really fun. I mean, I think it would have been, really good fun to get kind of comical and,
yeah,
just play something a bit different from what we're normally playing.
Yeah. And Mrs. Munro liked the play, but said it was far too risque to put on in the school. So the girls decided that they were going to put it on in the park instead.
Yeah.
And at the start of the play, Julie said she'd heard a lot of the audience that had gone to watch it in the park. They were there because they thought that there was going to be sex in the play. There was going to be a lot of talk about sex, but there wasn't. And she said to them, if you've come for porn, that you should go home now. And
always put in their place.
When you think about it, that sort of language getting used in a kids' TV program.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people that I know probably weren't allowed to watch it. I was always allowed to watch it, but there was a lot of parents that thought it was like teaching children inappropriate subject matters. Whereas my mum was always much more along the lines of, no, this is brilliant and educational and seeing the world in different ways.
Yeah, exactly what I say about. I'm convinced that's the reason my parents let me watch it, because it opens up. If I had questions about something, if I saw something on it, I could ask them questions about it. I'm convinced that's why they let me watch it.
And I think the whole point of Grange Hill was to kind of tackle challenging subjects and topical subjects and current affairs, but through the eyes of children.
Yeah, definitely. No, just an aside on that play, there was a park keeper, and he turned up and was saying, have you got the right permits and all that? And the only reason I've mentioned that is because he was played by Roy Heather, who was Sid, the cafe owner in Only Fools and Horses. Because I was watching that the other day and I was thinking, I've definitely seen that bloke in something else, like quite a prominent character, and then realised sort of who it was.
I love the way that some of the, the teachers and the adults in Grange Hill, they were often quite legendary kind of actors.
Well, that to me says how good Grange Hill was. The fact that, because if it was rubbish, a lot of those people wouldn't have wanted to be in it. I'm sure of that. Do you know what I mean? That's what I always say about it. And, we said that Julie had come on and said about, if you've come here for porn, if you've come here for sex, go home now. And as the play started, Dudley shouted out, get him off. So it was Julie that grabbed him on stage, and all the girls belittle him and shove him back down into his seat, into the audience.
We didn't make him strip, did we?
Sorry?
We didn't make him
No,
strip.
no, not this time. I think you might have threatened him with that, but it didn't actually happen. And I don't know if you remember, there was a time when Julie and Robin were babysitting.
So who were we
the first time was for a mate of Justine. It didn't exactly go to plan though, because baby wouldn't get out. He was a bit of a toddler. He wouldn't get out the bath and was splashing Julie instead. He got into the kitchen cupboard and ate all the food, which meant they had to bath him again. And they managed to get him sorted before his mum came home. But Julie did tell Justine that it had been like babysitting Freddy Krueger.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. And yeah, I think I do remember the scenes with the little boy and the splashing. Yeah.
I mean, we've talked a bit about doing the play in the park and in the house and stuff. It must be great when you get to do something that isn't in, the school set. You get to go somewhere else.
Love going on location, love, and the nighttime scenes, or I think in the later series there was driving lessons, or but that was brilliant because I actually got free driving lessons to prepare myself.
Brilliant.
So I got like a whole crash course in driving when I was just before I was 17, or
wow,
just as I'd turned 17. I can't remember, but it meant that when it was actually time to do my driving license, I'd had a bit of a head start.
Brilliant.
It's really good. There was a few perks.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And there was Julie and Robin got to do another babysitting job. But this time it was for a couple who were a friend of Robin's parents. And but it's mad when you watch it, because they're the type of couple, they don't really seem to be getting on. And they were arguing before they went out. The baby cried all night. The couple came home late and they were still arguing. So Julie and Robin didn't wait for the lift. He got off because the fella that had offered them the lift was drunk anyway. But they were worried about getting home because someone had been attacked in the area. And then Julie and Robin started running and a car pulled up as Robin fell over.
Oh, was that the dun dun dun?
Yeah.
Dun, 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 was that the end of of that episode?
Yeah, I think it was.
That would have been, yeah, I think that was. It was like the sort of holding drama.
But it was just Robin's mum had gone out looking for them. And in that series, the school choir went to Germany, but you weren't involved in that one. Was there any reason why you weren't involved?
I don't know if any of us were. I don't think Nina or Natalie. I don't remember any of us being in that bit. I think it might have been because Amy Phillips, Jessica, she was the year below.
Right.
So it might have been a different year that went.
Right, okay. Because there was a few different ones, and I remember speaking to Colin Ridgewell, and he wasn't sure if it was something to do with like less of a need for chaperones if the younger ones hadn't have gone or something like that. And I don't know if you remember, you were also there when Mrs. Munro finally left.
Oh, so sad.
She told them she was taking them on a trip to an exhibition of Elizabethan costumes, complete with lectures and slides, and only the way Mrs. Munro could have said that. And when she told them this, the kids weren't happy, and they'd all brought Mrs. Munro a present, and it was Julie that said, well, maybe we should take that present back. because of the trip she said she was taking them on. But she was actually taking them all to a restaurant. So they did give her the presents after all. Moving on then to series 18, and this is where you were in. You've just mentioned this one. You were in lower sixth.
This is the lower sixth.
Yeah.
This was an exciting year for me.
Yeah, this was where you started the driving lessons.
Is this the one like at the beginning of the series I was missing?
No, that was the next. That's the next year.
That's the next series, is it? Okay, so this is the one where I had the driving lessons.
Yeah.
Nina Robin that had something going on with Mr. Parrot.
Yeah, so how it started was Julie had like magazines, and she was asking Robin was asking what it was, and she wouldn't tell her, but all it was just like what car magazine, and then it came out that she was going to be having driving lessons,
Mm.
and Robin assumed at first that Julie had an older boyfriend because she saw her looking in a car showroom and assumed she was looking at the salesman and not at the car. But like you say, she was learning to drive. Robin waited with Julie for the instructor. And when the instructor turned up, they both thought he was quite nice. And he invited Robin to sit in the back of the car with them, for their first lesson, And I mean, the fella really fancied himself. I think he was called Chad, if I remember rightly.
Blonde.
Yeah.
He was blonde, yeah.
And if he wasn't called Chad, he certainly looked like a Chad. And
Or a Ken.
yeah, Julie scratched the car against the wall,
Ooh.
like a high wall.
I don't
And
think I got to actually drive the car into the wall.
oh, that would have been great, like if you had been able to do that. And the instructor seemed more interested in Robin, to be honest, than he did.
Did I get really annoyed? I think I got
Yeah,
really
yeah,
annoyed.
because
Stormed off. I was like fed up with that.
he invited Robin to have a go at the driving lesson at the driving in Julie's lesson, and he
She
said, "Are you getting
fancied
in?"
Robin.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, yeah. And then Julie found out that Robin had gone out with the instructor as well. He'd actually gone out on a date, but Robin had said she didn't really like him, and they both decided that they weren't going to see him again. Julie sort of wasn't having any more driving lessons. Now, there was talk of a road widening scheme and a
This was
bypass
brilliant.
being built on the school field. Now, can I ask? Because this is besides the sort of like the bullying, this was probably your biggest storyline, I think, at this point.
Yes.
Was that you then going to them and saying, "Look, can I have something?" Or did they say to you, "This is what's going to happen"?
Yeah, no, you didn't have a say. I mean, I think the series 19, I think someone had said, "Oh, if anyone wants to write their ideas for what the storylines coming up are going to be,
Right.
then you can write them on these bits of paper and you can give them into the writer's office. Doesn't
Uh-huh.
mean they'll happen, but you can make suggestions."
Right.
So I didn't make any suggestions for series 18, but I did make suggestions for series 19.
Right. Okay.
We can come to that when we get to
Yeah.
series.
Okay. Great. Yeah. So Julie was right at the front of the campaign to stop the road being built.
Yes. So she
Um,
put up a tent on the playing field. They were trying to create a road that went through their playing field, and I was
yeah.
trying to. So I think the protesting that I'd started to kind of had been inklings of in the earlier years. She'd started to get quite a strong character around
Yeah.
that.
Definitely. Definitely. You said there she put a tent up and refused to move when Mr. Robson came and talked to her.
Yeah.
So he then made a deal with her that she could stay on the field but to move off the football pitch. Um, and she also said that she was willing to go to jail for her beliefs as well. Now, can I ask? We've mentioned Mr. Robson a few times. We need to talk about Stuart Organ.
Yeah, he was amazing. I mean, he was just a character, wasn't he? And always there, very, very steady.
I mean, in general, then, how did you find your relationship with the adults?
Well, there was two people who had a huge impact on me. The first
Yeah.
one was Anna Quayle when I was
Uh-huh.
younger, in the younger years.
Yeah.
In the later years, there was one person who changed my life
Right.
dramatically, and that was Adam Ray, who played
Really?
the art teacher.
Yeah.
Because in his life, when he wasn't acting, he
Yeah.
was a graphic designer.
Right.
And so and I'd started getting into art. So I had a sketchbook carrying around with me.
Uh-huh.
So I started kind of sketching things. And he said, "Oh, you should come up and see my studio in Tottenham Court Road." So I went and visited him in his studio in Tottenham Court Road, and he had like, the old-fashioned drawing board, and he used to do graphic design with an airbrush, all
right.
old school.
Yeah.
And he told me about his journey from going to art college and becoming a graphic designer. And so that's how he sort of was acting or graphic design. So he had two really cool things side by side.
Yeah.
And it was that sort of led me on to go on and go to art college later on.
Wow, brilliant. Brilliant. Oh, wow. Okay. So, yeah, so Julie's staying in this tent. At first it wasn't waterproof. She was getting wet in there, but she
I
stayed.
remember the drip.
And I love this bit when people said to her, "What about your work?" She said, "Well, people are taping their lessons for me. People are taping the lessons so I don't miss out on anything." And
An answer for everything.
and the people, like, her friends were putting a fence up for her and flowers to make it nice for her. She even had a dog at one point when Colin asked her to look after his dog.
Oh, yeah. That little Jack Russell?
No, it was that was the first one. That was Gruff. That was Jacko's dog. Colin's
yeah.
dog was like a bit bigger. It was like bit of a crossbreed, like black dog. But there's a scene where Julie's having a conversation with Mr. Robson, and she's trying to hide this dog so he doesn't know. Trying to hide it in her sleeping bag. And in the end, it runs out. And Julie received a really cryptic letter delivered to the tent. And when she couldn't understand it, and when Dudley asked her what she thought the letter meant, Julie said it meant that he wasn't the only nutter out there. That was what she said. Mr. Robson again asked Julie to move the tent because the school were holding a fundraising day, and there would be a lot of publicity, and he didn't want the tent to be featured. But she steadfastly refused to move the tent. But on the fundraising day, it all went wrong because a helicopter arrived. Don't know if you remember that.
And blew the tent away.
To kidnap Mr. Parrot, and it did. It destroyed the tent.
Why was it kidnapping Mr. Parrot?
It was something to do with like the fundraising, and he was in on it.
But he was like a bit dodgy.
Yeah, no, he was in on it, but was acting like he wasn't.
Oh, I see.
But when her tent was destroyed, a lady called Roz turned up.
Was she from the Rainbow Tribe?
She was from the Taino tribe. It was the Taino tribe, yeah. And it was her who sent
That was all good. That was good. I got chained to washing machines and things.
Yeah, so Julie became a member, living in the squat, living in the house that they were going to knock down. And when I was watching this, I couldn't believe what one of the members of the tribe was played by Alex Lowe. We've talked about people being in Grange Hill, but I never expected to see Alex Lowe. Alex Lowe is more famous for being in comedy. He's been in all sorts, but he's got a comedy character called Clinton Baptiste, who is like a clairvoyant, shall we say, a bit of like a most haunted type of character. And he was actually in Phoenix Nights, and I couldn't believe that he was in it. Yeah, I was just really shocked to see him. But like, there was this bit with this, being in the house and being chained to the walls. She said, like, I mean, those scenes as well must have been great to film.
It was so fun to film, and I can't remember where. I think we actually went to kind of squats, like actual places where there were actual protests. Not all of the scenes, some of the inside ones, but there were some outside ones with like tree houses or something.
Right, I get you. Yeah.
Well, it is possible that I'm juggling this up with real life because
right, okay.
I did go to some of those places in my youth.
So at that time, were you sort of, I know you kind of mentioned it earlier, but were you developing that mindset in real life as well then?
I wouldn't say I was as political, but I was a bit of a hippie.
Right.
And I used to go to a nightclub called Whirligig where we all had bare feet and like dance to world music. And there was lots of people from that world there.
Yeah.
So I wasn't politically driven to kind of protest.
Right.
But I did know a lot of people in my social circles that might have been.
Right. Okay. I get you. Right, brilliant. Okay. So Julie was at the house when it was knocked down. and
Exciting.
nobody knew what had happened to her.
I mean, that was always a real highlight when you were in the end credits,
Yeah,
when you were because I think the bulldozing probably happened and that was the end of the
yeah.
episode. They always tried to end on a bit of a cliffhanger.
Like a bit of a duff duff moment, if we can borrow a
Dun, dun,
phrase
dun,
from
dun, dun,
EastEnders.
dun,
Like,
dun,
yeah.
dun.
And all that happened to Julie was she got a chipped bone from when the handcuffs had been cut off her. That was her only injury. The house was knocked down with her inside, but but nothing else happened to her. And she wanted to write an article for the school newspaper about what her experiences of like the things that she'd gone through. And Mr. Robson really liked it, but said that they needed another article alongside the one she'd written, so like a sort of a different argument. Because she was really saying about like the road shouldn't be built. She was against it, and he was saying that they should have had one for it. And she just said she wouldn't give in, and that the developers had Mr. Robson on their side. Roz from the tribe turned up again and asked Julie to go to Spain with them. But Julie said that she'd need to think about it because her mum wanted to finish her schooling. But Julie also said that she probably would turn up in Spain as well. And Julie and Robin had an argument about it possibly moving to Spain. Because Robin was saying, what about your schooling and coming here? And Julie said to her, I don't want to worry. I don't want to spend the next year worrying about what trendy clothes to wear. Basically having a go at Robin, because Robin was into all that, wasn't she? And Robin did say, well, a bag lady would have looked trendy next to Julie, to be honest. So were you ever contemplating leaving at that point?
No.
So you were always going to come back?
Yeah, it was never sort of part of it that I was going to get written out.
Right, okay.
Well, at least I didn't know about that.
Right, okay.
I was quite proud that I did the full 7 years.
Yeah, brilliant. But we'll talk about your 7th year, series 19. So you were mentioning earlier on about you got to give suggestions for.
Yes, I remember someone had said, if you write any ideas on a scrap of paper and give them into the office where the writers work, you might be able to give ideas for what they write about. So I was like, right, I want a boyfriend.
Right.
So I basically wrote, Julie gets a boyfriend. I think that was all it said on my slip.
Right, okay.
I was probably at the age in real life where I was thinking, I quite fancy a boyfriend now.
Okay. Brilliant. And you also mentioned earlier on, this is the series where you weren't in it at the start.
Yeah, so this is at the beginning there was a bit of drama around where is Julie, where's she gone, she's missing, or she's left the country, no one knows where she is.
Yeah.
And she left at the end of series 18, quite a hippie, very scruffy, rainbow clothes, hip, tie-dye, kind of the crusty look. And then I think after a couple of episodes of series 19, she reappears miraculously, but smart and like all smartened up and saying she wanted to beat the system within the system.
Yeah. So the thing about that, you saying about people not knowing where she is, even her mum didn't know where she was. Julie had sent Robin a postcard which said that she was in Spain, and Robin went to see Julie's mum, and Julie's mum was like, I don't know where she is, but now that she's written to you, at least I know that she's happy. But then Julie then turned up unannounced.
And was it the same mum that was in episode?
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah. And her mum said to Julie, well, I had an idea that you'd be on your way home because I got a letter came for you from Spain. And Julie like sort of quickly hid it. And you were speaking Spanish a little bit in some, like you'd say like some Spanish phrases. Can you actually speak Spanish?
No, definitely not. I'm better French than Spanish. Although my mum lives in Spain now, but no, at the time, definitely not.
Right. And when Julie came back at this time, she had quite a bit more of an attitude about her.
She was determined and ready for action.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, she came back. She still wanted to be involved, protecting the environment, but she wanted to be qualified, as you said, so that she had the right tools and the right mind to defeat the system, basically. And when she went back to school, all the others were sort of saying about, as you mentioned there, how different she looked, and she looked quite sophisticated and all this, all except Paula, who was quite jealous of the attention that Julie was getting.
Yeah, she was brilliant fun. She's a real comedian, and she was a good friend for years. I still speak to her occasionally.
Right, yeah,
And
brilliant.
that's, Nina, Abby, Natalie, if we all met up, it would be like yesterday.
Brilliant. I love that. I love that. And then we found out about the letter that she had. It was from a bloke who came from Barcelona called Loggy, I think was the name that they were calling him. His name was Rodrigo. And he'd gone out to see, because she'd been staying with the protesters.
Yeah.
And this guy was a photographer who'd come out to see what they were doing. And he invited her to Barcelona, but she stayed with him, but they were just friends. And then we found out about, Mr. Brisley was there, we mentioned, with Christoph. Now, Christoph.
Yeah, was he an art assistant or an assistant?
He was a French assistant, he was. But they assumed that he was Mr. Brisley's boyfriend.
Yeah.
And then there was like a disco for, because there'd been a French exchange. So Julie asked Gabriel if she could play a song so that she'd get to dance with Christoph. And I don't know if you can remember what the song was.
I don't remember that. I remember the first thing happening in the laser tag thing.
Right. So
happened before that, did it?
So it was always sort of like nearly on the cards.
There was a bit of a flirtation going on.
Yeah. And
doing Greece.
Yeah. So she asked Gabriel to play Wild Thing by the Sogs so that she get to dance with him. All the girls fancied Christoph at that point. And we saw Julie draw a portrait of Christoph. And I'm guessing from what you've said, did you actually draw that?
I didn't. No, that was presented in the art room. It was really good, wasn't it? I remember
really good.
Really good portrait. Yeah. And so I was doing art A level, wasn't I, with Mr. Brisley?
Mr. Brisley, yeah. And when Christoph saw the portrait, he said Julie had made him handsome, but she said that she didn't. She just drew what she saw. Yeah, I love that. And Robin had asked Julie what was going on with them, and she said not only was a teacher, she was a pupil. But then Christoph then asked Julie to go and see an exhibition of retro images to give them ideas for the design for Greece.
Oh, that's right. He asked me on a bit of a date.
Yeah. Was there any reason why Julie wasn't actually in the production of Greece?
I think I was there.
You were like doing like the design and stuff, but you weren't actually like.
Maybe I was just involved in the design. Yeah. But I remember being in a scene.
Yeah, so there was quite a bit of that, like
around the car. They were doing something with the car.
Yeah, so Julie went to the exhibition and met Christoph. This was when they thought about the Robin and Mr. Parrot thing was going on. But at the same time, Julie and Christoph were sort of, we're getting closer, and she was going off on his motorbike with him and things like that. And eventually, as you said, there was like a little bit. Julie and Christoph were building the sets for Greece. And Julie had found out that Christoph had split up with his girlfriend in Paris. And
that was funny because he actually did have a girlfriend in Paris in real life, Dominique Pluch. He did.
Yeah.
He had a French girlfriend in real life, yeah. Because I went and stayed with them. Actually, no, she was a French lady, but they lived in New York. And I went later on. But that scene that you're talking about, where they're building the set, it was one of it really stays in my mind, that scene, because it was one of the most awkward scenes. Because I remember the director at the time, he was getting really frustrated with me that I wasn't flirting enough. And he's like, you need to flirt more. And I was quite young myself, and I didn't really probably know how to flirt in real life. And, and I remember finding it like really challenging and a bit awkward.
Brilliant. They were getting quite close, and then he said to Julie, she told Julie that she was a good friend, and Julie got annoyed because she thought that he was going to say something else to her. Yeah. And she just said, yeah, that's me, a friend.
Yeah.
And they'd been working on the sets, as we said, and they were sitting in the car that they built, and they were about to kiss. But then they got interrupted because Mrs. Maguire, the secretary, brought in Mrs. Betterton, who was going to be the maternity cover, and it's sort of like the kiss got broken up, and they ran out. But then, as you said, they went to like the hologram factory. It was called. It was like the laser thing. Now that looked amazing. That it was like an immersive, like
That was really fun. That was all a set. That was
was
not a
it?
place. That was all a set. It was all set up to film that. And it was
Wow.
really fun.
Yeah, because
Smoke
it
machines.
yeah, it looks like a genuine place.
Yeah, no, it isn't.
Wow. Christoph got separated from the group, and Julie went looking for him, and that was when they kissed for the first time. But the next day, Christoph was ignoring her, and when she asked him why, he said it was difficult because of the relationship being in the school. They did start a relationship, and Julie told Robin that she was going to try and get into an art college in Paris when she left Grange Hill. And the school production of Grease went ahead, and the series ended. Can you remember how that series ended?
Oh, it was Greece. We
Yeah,
go together.
yeah, brilliant, yeah. And obviously, you know, you've meant the six formers were all dancing to "We Go Together" in the staff room, and obviously, you mentioned earlier that you'd done the full 7 years. How did you feel about having to leave?
Well, you see, it sort of it just we always knew that that was what would happen, so it didn't feel. So I'm not an overly emotional person like that.
Right.
It sort of just got on with it, really.
Uh-huh.
It was an opportunity to do things like go traveling, and it was like leaving school in real life.
Yeah. I
And I
mean,
was the same age. I was the same age as my character.
oh
So
wow.
I was actually finishing sixth form when I was finishing sixth form in Grange Hill.
Right. Well, brilliant. So after Grange Hill, I use IMDb for most of my research, which I know isn't the most
Yeah.
reliable. And anyone who's listened to the podcast, I apologize to you because I say that in most of the episodes. But you've seen that you were in an episode of The Bill,
Yeah.
and I've on your IMDb it says you were in something called Alan's Story. Is that right?
Well, that was a film made by Now Then. Her name was Claire. She was at Grange Hill. She was one of the teachers, I think.
All right. Okay.
Blonde, Irish, blonde
So she
bob.
was Mrs. Maguire. You're
What
describing
was her
to me
name in real life?
the secretary. I cannot for the life of me remember that one. I apologize.
Well, her, Mrs. Maguire. It was a
Right.
friend of hers, I think, who'd written this film. So it was a short film,
Uh-huh.
and so I acted in that. I'd forgotten about that, but that was quite a good film. That's a really good
Yeah.
little film.
But Nina Fry's in it as well.
Yeah, we're both in it.
Right.
So
And Nina Fry's in it now, quite coincidentally, playing a character called Louise Corrigan.
yeah, I
Just
think
like
it's
a distant family member of Julie.
but it was quite a good little British grit film. It's a bit,
Yeah.
it's a good little arty film,
Yeah.
black and white as far as I can remember.
Right.
It's a
And
film to be part of.
that was it on your IMDb. Did you do more acting or?
So what happened was I was toying with the idea of should I go to art college or should I go to like drama school and take it really, really seriously.
Uh-huh.
And I was quite kind of cocky in a way. I thought, well, everyone used to say to me, because we all knew that not everyone will end up acting. We all
Yeah.
knew that some people would probably do it and some people wouldn't. And everyone used to say to me, if anyone will make it, Margo, it'll be you that makes it. Or, and I was kind of confident to a certain extent that I would just carry on acting.
Yeah.
But then, so I decided to follow Adam Ray's footsteps and go to art college so that I had something creative that I could do on the side when I wasn't acting.
Right.
So I went to art college, and as immediately as I got to art college, I just fell in love with that world. Like I felt extremely at home. I felt surrounded by people that got me. Not that throughout the years of Grange Hill, they were all my friends, and I wasn't sort of the oddball, the one that didn't fit in, but there was something about going to art college where I suddenly thought, this is my world, these are my people. And I also went backpacking, but in the year before I went backpacking, I did several auditions which didn't come to anything. And then I got an audition which I was shortlisted for, like 4 or 5 auditions. And I said to my agent at the time, can you let me know about this audition? Because I've got a ticket to go backpacking like around Asia.
Nice.
And, you know, I'd really like to know if I've got it. And they said to me, oh, we can't really let you know anymore. All we can tell you is that you're down to the last 5 people. And I thought, you know what, I'm just going to go because there's so many disappointments around auditions. I'm just going to.
Yeah.
So I went backpacking, and this was before the days of email and mobile phones. When I got back, there was a letter saying that I'd got the part and that I was unreliable and I should get a new agent.
Oh my God.
I never, ever did anything ever again.
Wow.
But because of that, so that was quite a difficult lesson to learn. I mean, I could have got back on the horse and gone out and got a new agent. But instead, what I did was I just absolutely loved what I was doing at art college. I ended up doing a degree in textiles and I threw myself at it so hard. And because I sort of felt like I'd messed up so badly, really, really determined that I will never, ever make this mistake again. And so I took every opportunity and gave everything 110%.
Brilliant. Yeah.
And so I ended up doing a degree at Chelsea College of Art, then an MA at the Royal College of Art. And then, you know, I got a lot of work as soon as I left in the world of textiles. 2001. So between 2001 and 2003, I did a lot of freelance design work. And in 2003, I started my business.
Yeah. So can you tell us then, what is your business? Because I mean, I know what it is, but when I found out what it was, I was like, wow, that's incredible.
It's called Margo Selby. I'm a textile designer, maker, producer, and I've got a brand. So I work a lot with various different places on the high street, as well as creating big textile art installations, and I'm really loving it. And I feel like for years and years and years, I did have a bit of a sick feeling about messing up with the acting. And I sort of was a bit annoyed with myself that I didn't get back on the horse and keep it going. But, you know, probably about 10 years in, so about 15 years ago, I actually looked at my life and I thought, you know, actually, this is as rewarding, if not more. And I'm really, really, really content with what I'm doing. But I think it's like anything in life. You can take a left or you can take a right and you can make that road good. So that you don't really need to worry too much. Just go for it and see what happens.
Yeah. I mean, like following you on like social media and stuff, it's evident. It's really evident how much you enjoy doing it. You just said that you're quite content, but it's so evident that you enjoy doing it.
Yeah, no, it's good. I didn't respond to you for quite a long time, I think, because it's such a different world now. I mean, and then, you know, I do podcasts and I do interviews a lot about my work now. So it just feels so far removed. But when I listened to the podcast, I was like, oh, all my old friends, and it's so lovely to be reminded of it. And actually, you know, I'm very proud of everything, you know, all the different stages in my life. And it's, you know, it's interesting how things evolve.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Well, Margo, we are sort of coming towards the end of the interview now. And I'm going to ask you the same few questions that I always ask everyone at the end of every episode. So, you know, over the past couple of years, there's been quite a bit of talk about a Grange Hill movie in the works. What do you think of the idea of a Grange Hill movie?
I want to. This could be my return to acting. Give me another chance.
Brilliant.
I would absolutely love that.
Yeah,
I could come back as a teacher, as a very strict teacher.
Doing art and design, obviously.
Yeah, it could be art. Something about the environment, science and the environment. Yeah.
Brilliant.
If you hear of any who's making it, tell them I'd love to be in it.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And you said that you watched Grange Hill when you were a kid. So, other than Julie Corrigan, who was your favourite character in Grange Hill?
I mean, I always really looked up to Rachel Roberts, Justine. You know, she was like a real star in, I think, the era that I was part
Yeah,
of. And then, I mean, Anna Quayle, just legend. Absolutely. I just absolutely loved her. She was so maternal and so interesting and kind and fun. So, yeah, I had a lot of very, very fond memories of her.
yeah, brilliant. And if you couldn't have played Julie, which other character do you think you would have liked to have played?
Oh, I don't know. I like the idea of being a teacher. I like the idea of, yeah, I like the idea of turning the role the other way and
Yeah,
the other side of things.
brilliant. Okay, so then the final question, Margot, is why do you think there is still such affection for Grange Hill?
I do think it was an extremely groundbreaking creation. It was brave in that it tackled all these like really raw subjects in a
Uh-huh,
way that I don't think had ever been done on television for children.
uh-huh.
And, it didn't portray everything as, fluffy and nice. It had a real edge to it. And I think people love an edge. People
Yeah,
want a bit of grit and a bit of reality.
definitely.
And I suppose there was just so many years of just exploring all these different topics.
Mhm.
And as kids, like my kids are the same, they love watching programs about children.
Yeah.
I don't know what the current competitors are. What can you watch now that is
For kids, I wouldn't know. I,
think about schools or
I think one of the reasons why Grange Hill came to an end was because the whether it was Ofcom or children BBC or whoever, I think it might have been Ofcom, decided that the output for children's television had to cater for under 11s, which is to
Mm,
me just seems an absolute nonsense.
yeah.
You know, there's kids there that age group from 11 to 16, 17. There's not really a great deal for them. Now I know there's things like YouTube and other things, but there's still surely there's a market somewhere for something. It just seemed a nonsense that was the ruling that they came up with.
Mm.
It
Well, there
just
was Biker Grove was doing well, and then
yeah,
Hollyoaks came
yeah.
shortly after, didn't
I
it?
mean, I think Hollyoaks is probably the only one that would
Yeah.
cater for teenagers that I know of. I know they'll watch like Waterloo Road and things like that, but there's nothing really, is there? I wouldn't have thought. But well, anyway, Margot, thank you so much for coming on. It's
Thank you,
big.
Neil. I hope
It
that I made sense. I couldn't remember all of that middle bit was a blur.
no, well, don't worry, don't worry. You've remembered more than some. Let's just put it that way. But honestly, it's been great talking to you. So thank you so much for coming on. And to anyone that's listening, I'll speak to you next time. Cheers.
Take care, Neil.
Thanks. Bye bye.